Hi, everybody. This is Dr. Bob Ross, President CEO of the California Endowment, and welcome the MIE conference to Los Angeles. I am so sorry I can't be there with you today, but I'm at a beach in Hawaii right now, and hopefully you'll be enjoying your time in Los Angeles as much as I'm enjoying my time here. But I'm so glad to see this conference come to Los Angeles. California is an important place to incubate and learn about how mission investing and impact investing can take greater root in our field, in our state, and in our nation to make sure that we are advancing the cause of economic inclusion and capital in communities that so badly need it in the years ahead. We think the time is now for philanthropy to assert its leadership boldly and resolutely in service of full economic inclusion and shared prosperity for all across this nation. If we can do that by making certain that 100% of our assets, rather than just 5 or 6% of our assets, are in service of economic inclusion, of shared prosperity, of community wellness, then we must take steps to do that. And that's why I'm so thrilled and proud to be part of this Mission Investors Exchange, working with each and every one of you, learning from each and every one of you about how we assert leadership boldly in the field of philanthropy. So in this context, we're reminded that just like social justice, this is a journey. It is a journey for us at the California Endowment. It has been a journey for many of you. It started for us nearly 2 decades ago when we began first with negative screens on our investment portfolio, screening out tobacco and firearms in for-profit prisons. Then we graduated to doing more program-related investments, investing in community health centers around the state of California. And then starting with mission investing and impact investing and growing that portfolio as well. So this has been a journey, and we continue to learn, we continue to grow, we continue to test, we continue to innovate. And that's what we share with all of you at this conference. This conference itself started out as maybe just a handful of people many years ago, and now 300, 400, 500 people in the room. Mission and impact investing has grown from something that was curious, maybe intriguing, innovative, to something that is now a discipline, something where we can all rally around the table and learn from one another, test new boundaries, and continue to keep the ball rolling down the field on mission and impact investing. We're hoping that folks are inspired by our board's commitment to go all in on mission investing. The total amount of dollars in endowments across the country, in foundation endowments and university endowments, is more than $2 trillion. Imagine the economic power, the advancing of economic inclusion, if the majority of that $2 trillion could be committed in this manner towards impact investing, mission investing, and capital for underserved communities. What a difference we all could make. In closing, I just want to let you know that I'm in my final months as the President CEO of the California Endowment. Retirement is near, but I leave with a great deal of pride that this gathering is going to continue to move economic inclusion for all forward across this nation. Thank you.
Friends, please welcome Ken Jones, Vice President and Chief Financial Officer of the MacArthur Foundation.
Well, first of all, good afternoon. And they made a mistake. I'm no longer CFO. I'm actually currently the Senior Vice President, Chief Operating Officer, and Chief Equity Officer for the MacArthur Foundation. And I'm also honored to serve as the Board Chairperson for MIE, affectionately known as the Mission Investors Exchange. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you here to today's Luncheon Plenary, Unlocking All Assets for Impact. As Dr. Ross, who I have had a chance to know, reminds us, there's never been a more crucial time for philanthropy to assert its leadership in making sure that all of our assets are working collectively toward driving positive social and environmental change. I applaud the California Endowment for its bold commitment to go all in and work toward aligning its entire $4 billion endowment with its mission and values. As he noted, this work is a journey, for individual foundations, and for the field. Together, we will continue to learn, test, grow, and innovate. In today's plenary, we will begin the conversation with a panel of leading foundation presidents as they explore where they are on their journey and how they work to activate all assets for impact. Please join me in welcoming Bruce McNamer, President of Builders Vision, who will moderate the discussion. So thank you, and let's get it started.
Good afternoon. I can't see any of you,
No,
but I feel your presence.
can't see anything.
I am Bruce McNamer. I'm the president of Builders Initiative, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to what I think should be a terrific panel this afternoon, talking about unlocking all assets for impact. And we have a great panel representing different kinds of foundations, different sizes of foundations, but I would say that what our panelists have in common is, one, they are in their own right exceptional leaders in terms of their backgrounds and experience, and I think commitments, demonstrated commitments to impact. And they each represent institutions that, in their own ways, now going by more than 10 years in some cases here, really leaning into unlocking different assets and in different ways for the impact that they want to see in the world. Let me just, if you'll indulge me just for a second, start for a second by saying how we at Builders Initiative come into this conversations ourselves. We are, I think, probably the youngest of the entities up here, and we are based in Chicago. Builders Initiative is, in fact, the philanthropic arm of Builders Vision, which is Lucas Walton's family office, and we call it our impact platform. Colleagues across the office, many of them investment professionals, all united around one mission, and that is shifting markets and minds for good. So we do that utilizing different tools, deploying in different asset classes, in three sectors: healthy oceans, sustainable food and agriculture, and energy and climate equity. And again, different tools for different problems and opportunities in those areas. So on the market rate side of our investment portfolio, we are investing in companies, directly in companies with venture capital, with growth equity, real assets. We invest in funds, in the private markets. We have a large asset management function that is investing in public companies. And then within Builders Initiative itself, we are a bit of a microcosm of that. We do, of course, grant making. We do about $200 million in grant making a year. Our endowment at this point is about a $1.8 billion endowment. We have invested that 90% for impact. And we have also set up a limited liability, non-tax exempt investment entity that invests in much higher risk, potentially high impact companies and funds, very often just very, very early stage, so high risk, but where we think there's a real opportunity for impact. So we're fortunate to have that set of tools and assets to deploy for good, but that's really a function of who we are, our history, and I think that's true for each of the institutions. It's true for each of you in the particular institutions that you represent. So with that as prelude, let me just, introduce very quickly our panelists. Flozell Daniels Jr. is the president of the Mary Reynolds Babcock Mary Reynolds Babcock Foundation. Nicole Taylor is the president and CEO of the Silicon Valley Community Foundation, and Sam Gill is president and CEO of the Doris Duke Foundation. So let me start here by asking you each to give some context for the journeys that your organizations have been on. I know that in your case, Flozell, it's probably over 10 years ago that the foundation first made its commitment to think about impact investing in a new way and to be, all in on that commitment. Here we are, well and down the path that you're in. How's that commitment working, and how is that evolving over time?
Thank you, Bruce. It's going really well. I do want to first, though, congratulate Mission Investors Exchange. It's been a few years since I've been to the conference. I've been in transition to this position, And I first met this group in 2008. PRI Makers Network came to New Orleans for its conference. As the CEO, the newly appointed CEO of what was then the Louisiana Disaster Recovery Foundation, I was asked to give an opening. I got to know about the work, and at the same time, we were having discussions with our more than 100 grantee partners about the different needs they had for the fullest use of capital. And so the next year, we started a PRI fund under the tutelage of PRI Makers Network and some of the folks around the country, the members who really drive this work. And so I'm so grateful to be here with this incredible set of folks and the team and the board members, people like Ken and others who've invested in this work, because we've been able to see the trajectory of this work really move forward over the years. It won't surprise you then when I got to the Babcock Foundation a little more than a year ago, I was completely satisfied that they'd been on this journey since the 1980s, really beginning to test inside of what has been for more than 70 years a deep social justice and racial equity practice of philanthropy. How could they use the full amount of their resources toward that mission? And so while we invest in policy work, organizing, advocacy, we have also invested and started testing in the 80s considerable resources, at least for us. We're a small foundation, $180 million in assets, but we have a $10 million PRI fund, and we started to test those practices back then. And since then, that work has evolved to full mission investment with 100% commitment inside of our portfolio. We've been working with our investment committee and the board. For the last 7 years, we beat our benchmark 5 of those 7 years, while investing considerable resources in Black and brown fund managers, actively seeking out and sourcing Black and brown entrepreneurs inside of those opportunities, and really updating from our social justice position on the impact investment side to include racial equity, and really starting to take on the tension between getting the returns that we need and deserve while we're investing fully with regard to our mission. Because of what's happening in the country now, this is one of the most difficult times in recent American history. We doubled our payout in 2021 to 11%.
Excellent.
Thank you for that. And as you can imagine, it has given the heebie-jeebies to some members of the investment committee. And so there's a real wrestling with what does impact look like for us? How much resources do we need to actually be impactful? The good news is we've been able to see great returns, and we're now in a process of reimagining both on the private market side. What does it look like for us to achieve those goals? Really learning from and working with folks in this room and others across the country. And we're getting a chance under the leadership of our new Impact Investment Officer, Julius Kimbrough, who's here with us, to restructure our program-related investment work so that it is even more aligned with our grant-making portfolio.
And you're back to, it's 5.5% is your payout.
Yeah, that's the standard. It's still 11%. What the board is going to make, we made a 5-year commitment, and so we're doing that through 2025. And we're in the conversations now about what the payout analysis looks like and what those decisions will be. It's a little easy for us because we make multi-year general operating support grants on our grant-making side, so we can scale and schedule in a way that allows us to think about how we keep those commitments. Yeah.
Nicole,
Yes.
you run a community foundation. It's not just any community foundation, it's by far the largest community foundation. And I have to imagine thinking about managing impact assets for impact. You have the endowment itself, but then you have that other large pool or multiple pools,
Yes.
which is the funds of your DAF
Our
holders
donors.
there at Silicon Valley. Talk a little more about that experience,
Yeah.
and I would just recognize that you and your team over the years have really leaned in, particularly on diverse fund managers, and love to hear more about how that's playing.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the largest. We have $12 billion of assets under management, and we don't just have one endowment. So our endowment's only $350 to $375 million of the $12 billion, and it's not one endowment. It's over 100 endowed funds that make up our endowment. So, and this is pretty typical of community foundations. And the rest, the 86%, are donor advised funds. And we have over 1,000 fund holders. That means we have over 1,000 individual donors and families and 65 companies that we work with. And given that our endowed fund pool is so limited, spits out $14 million a year in grant making, we really recognize that in order to make a dent in the work that we care about, which is equity and the inequity that exists in Silicon Valley, we had to really use all of our assets. So what does that mean? So first of all, our donors are extremely generous. They're not sitting on their funds. In any average year, we give out $2 billion. So it's about 15 to 20% is our payout, a little different than private foundations. Last year, we gave out $4.6 billion, and that's what our donors are doing. So they're not sitting, they're putting it out and replenishing it, putting it out and replenishing it. So I wanted to dispel that myth. And we encourage our donors to do, real direct impact investing. So at any given time right now, we have 26 donors that are deploying $73 million of capital in direct impact investing that we help them with vetting. Sometimes we bring on consultants. In terms of the other, the rest of our balance sheet, so there's a number of things we do. One, who's managing the money? So 57% of all of our dollars are being managed by diverse managers. Very few other foundations are doing that. So that's our endowed pool. We also have 3 investment pools that donors can invest in, a short-term pool, which is cash or cash equivalents. We got a lot of money in there. Mid-term pool and a longer-term pool that acts endowment-like. In something that is easy that many organizations can do, we set up CDs with a lot of our cash in CDFIs because it's like low interest loan dollars for them, easy to access. Others, we have community banks that we use our cash, in addition to the mandate that we have around diverse managers for our dollars. We have, in terms of the broader impact investing, we started years ago. We had launched a recoverable grant program. We encouraged donors to get in on the game, and that has yielded an incredible amount of work and dollars back into community around affordable housing developments. 157 projects were funded by this recoverable grant program. Capital for small businesses, solar installation and regenerative agriculture practices, all of this with $2 million that just keeps recycling in and out of our community, and we worked with CapShift on that. We are just launching, and Patrick Maloney with Occam Advisors, Patrick is in here, there he is, way in the back. Patrick and his team have been incredible. Each year out of our short-term pool, we're putting in almost $3.5 million into what we're calling an integrated capital strategy. And we are starting pretty conservatively because we got to get anxious investment committee members and board members to recognize that CDFIs are a really low-risk way of getting into impact investing. And each year we are going to bring, Occam is working with our team to bring direct impact investments that we can make, and specifically around housing, one of our key issues, economic mobility, another key issue. We are also focused on early childhood, which is a little harder, so in the next couple years we expect to see more of that. And the capital and interest returns to the CDFI, which returns into the fund. So we expect all these investments to turn over 2 to 4 times just in a short period of time that we're going to make these investments. Again, easy, conservative. We intend to get more aggressive as our board and folks on the teams get more familiar with how this all works. We created a separate advisory committee that has board members and community leaders on it to help advise and guide on this. So that is the breadth of work, and I bring that up because community foundation is very different. We are trying to activate every part of our asset classes throughout the foundation. So just a little bit of taste.
Excellent.
Of what we do.
Sam, I think impact investing or leaning into that predates your arrival, I think, at Doris Duke, but I know of late you and your CIO are thinking anew about how to think about impact investing, and even going so far as to publish article, I think recently in Institutional Investor, I can't remember, entitled provocatively, "Is Value-Oriented Investment Dead?"
I think that's more the editors at Institutional Investor than
what you
piece.
do.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I
for
think
SEO.
it does speak to a kind of reorientation of how you're thinking about unlocking assets for impact at Doris Duke, but I'd love to hear more about it.
Yeah, well, thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to be here, and thanks to everyone else for being a part of this important conversation. Just back of the baseball card on Doris Duke Foundation, $2 billion independent endowment. We fund in a range of issues from the performing arts to medical research. And in addition to our endowment, we also own and operate a Center for Applied Conservation in New Jersey called Duke Farms, and a Center for Global Transformation and a Museum of Islamic Art called Shangri-La in Hawaii. So we have a wide array of assets. And our attitude really is that what sets foundations apart is not the scale of the capital, because in the context of the kinds of problems that we're trying to address, it's not that significant of a scale. But what sets us apart is our independence. There really is no natural constituent, external constituent for a foundation. And so the grant is an answer to the question of what independent capital can do to advance social change and social innovation, but it's not the only answer. And we're living in a world in which impact investing is obviously an illustration of the wider range of answers that are available to the question of kind of what can independent capital do distinctly. And so that's really what drives our thinking. And so what led us to integrated impact investing was an affirmative opportunity and a set of challenges that we were trying to solve. The affirmative opportunity is that the kinds of conversations that happen at Mission Investors Exchange are some of the most interesting conversations about how to mobilize independent capital in new and different ways. And so we really wanted to commit to the idea that finance, insight, and knowledge and the tools of finance could be an important part of how we mobilize independent capital, and really remain focused on the idea that we always want to be fitting the right tool to the problem rather than the problem to the tool. But we also were trying to solve a few problems, some of which are endemic and some of which are more ephemeral. The first one is we do think that charitable activities, including but not exclusively confined to grants, are an important way for independent capital to drive impact. And we didn't want to be embarrassed about the revenue function of the endowment to enable those charitable activities. That's what allows the independence. You don't need a constituent because you have an endowment. So we wanted to figure out a way that we could continue to feel good about having return expectations in a world where there appropriately is a lot of scrutiny on foundations because of the imputed signaling potential. The second challenge that we were trying to solve is and it's a good problem, which is the maturity of the market rate environment around so many of the issues that we were working on. And we saw places where the velocity of return-seeking capital was a better opportunity for impact than some of our grant making. A good example, we're significant funders as I mentioned, in medical research. We provide a lot of career support to early career physician scientists. Well, because of the role of computation now in biomedical science, universities don't really have a monopoly on the most important capital. A lot of the really interesting work is either being financed or led in venture or private equity. So these were sort of better investment vehicles, and we wanted to have an approach that allowed us to seize those market opportunities as opposed to saying, program makes all the decisions, and then we'll see if we can find something aligned. And then the third problem that we were trying to solve was a problem we sort of think of as the hazy middle, which is that what we felt in our own work and what we saw in some others, particularly on the concessionary side of impact investing, is that sometimes the concession wasn't just around the return. That there was sort of no one owned the investment. The investment team said, we're seconding these resources to concession. The program team said, that's what the investment team leads. And then what you have is sort of a B+ investment opportunity as opposed to an A+. investment opportunity, no matter what vehicle is happening. And we were worried about running into that after the kind of first phase of our journey, which was setting a target and meeting it and staffing up for it. So under our Chief Investment Officer, Lena Buta, our Director of Investments, Jennifer Katz, who's here somewhere, we developed this approach we call integrated impact investing. And the mission statement of it is really quite simple. It's using the tools of finance in order to maximize the impact of Doris Duke Foundation. Practically, it means two things. One is that we're going to have dedicated market rate investments that advance our mission, our strategies, and our mission where we think those are the best investment opportunities, and we don't want any financial concession there. We think this is really about harnessing the power of capital markets to advance impact. And so we call that endowment integrated impact investing. And then program integrated impact investing is using the tools of finance, which may be concessionary investment tools. It could be guaranteeing debt, a whole range of financial tools to actually advance our specific program strategies. And there we want to be really clear that it's got to actually advance the program strategy. It can't be ancillary. It can't be to the side of. We have to say, we have a program strategy in building an indigenous-led conservation movement in this country, and we think the lever is going to be some concessionary tool of finance, and it needs to be co-owned by the program and our investment team.
And you're embarking on this now and putting in.
Correct.
We'll come back to kind of the implementation, but yeah.
Correct.
Just a quick question on that. Does that ultimately mean maybe a reorientation where for the medical research you do relatively less grant making and more investing, or is it the investing that we do will primarily be in medical research because that's market ready?
I think on a dollars and cents basis, it's not that we won't do less investing. What it will mean is we're not going to try to use a grant to do something a return-seeking investment can do, which is what we had been doing and part of our practice. And so what ends up happening is you're spending the same amount of money in grants, you're investing the same amount of money in capital, but you're getting a much higher marginal return because you're in a more competitive position in each of those different forms of capital allocation, as opposed to sort of doing something inefficiently on the program side or doing something inefficiently on the return-seeking side.
Spend a little more time, let's collectively on. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say something that Sam just said was really, I think, critical when we think about impact investing is that you've integrated it throughout the organization, right? You brought these two kind of factions, if you will, within Foundation together, which is something that we have done. So the program team is working with Occam advisors to identify, source the investments. The investment team and the finance teams are helping with the due diligence. We have our development, our donor-facing team, and our marketing team figuring out, okay, how are we going to market this to donors when we, hopefully sooner rather than later, can open it up to our donors to actually invest in this fund. It has, all of those pieces have to be at the table, and they are now, versus just one part of the organization or the other. And I'm sure it's probably the same.
It's exactly the same. And I'll add, because many of the organizations that we're investing in on either side are smaller, and so they need equity investments.
Right.
And so really working with the grant-making team to think about
Right.
what do those grants look like that match our PRIs,
Right.
and how do we match that from a values perspective with our market rate investments is exactly the sort of thing that we're wrestling with internally.
Just to stay on that for a second, and Nicole, to pick back up on that, we're thinking about the how to of this, and the various aspects of implementation here, and that may, and I'm particularly interested in your investment committees, but how you think from a governance perspective, how you think about this from a talent perspective, and the right experience in the right roles, how you think about this from an impact measurement perspective when you get into this, and continual learning, and not all those things, but what's most salient for you right now as you think about, you've come this far, but how are you thinking about any of those aspects of what it is you're doing?
I think all of those things.
Right.
No, but practically one of the things that we focused on is our investment committee. And so we have an advantage. I run a private family foundation that has decided to diversify its board. So we have 6 family members and 7 independent practitioners, people who are experts in their work, typically organizing democracy protection, the kind of things that we fund, The investment committee is actually populated with family members who also have private sector financial and investment management experience, as well as non-board members, typically Black and brown folks who have raised their own funds, who have been inside of financial and investment management, so they're deep experts from a technical perspective, but also have a values-aligned orientation to the work. And we also have folks who are on the program-related side of that work, so that we can make sure that we're constantly
The investment committee.
on the investment committee. And it really gets to the point you made about talent, wanting to make sure that we have folks who can help advise the team. Obviously, we have talented folks on the team, making sure we have the right kind of advice and wise counsel. And we've been wrestling with making sure that there's balance on the committee, because our program-related investments are also being decided in that same space. And quite frankly, we tend to lean heavily on the private side of the portfolio inside of that committee. And so we're doing some work on that right now. And we're having an honest and difficult conversation about risk management and really shifting a discussion about our risk profile. What does it mean for us, not only from an underwriting perspective, to think about risk and what we might lose, but also to think about what we might lose if we don't invest, from a diverse perspective, from a racial equity, and from a justice perspective, and how do we factor that into our ability to make and meet mission? And that's been a thoughtful and enlightening discussion, and it's a journey that we're on in real time.
Nicole, I'd encourage you to respond as you would, but I do, this may not be getting at the mark, but as you think about expertise governance, and there you have outreach too, I expect, to independent investment advisors to each of your DAF hold. I mean, that becomes quite an undertaking.
Yes.
But speak to any aspect of that.
So if you have a threshold, we just raised it to $5 million and over in your donor advised fund, you can request to have an investment advisor, a separate investment advisor, advise your funds, and we have an entire process on vetting that. And and we have, as you can imagine, several very large donors who take advantage of that. And we have a top-notch investment team, and in terms of we have an outsourced CIO model. So Cambridge Associates is our outsourced CIO model. And then we have small internal team, and our investment committee, amazing. And we have external expertise on that, as well as board members. So we have folks who cover the gamut in terms of the asset classes that they're really expert in. And I mean, it's part of what a community foundation does. We have to juggle a lot of balls at the same time, and it's just making sure you have the right talent and the partners. We knew that we couldn't afford to build out an entire investment team that we would need to do all of this work, which is why we have this OCIO model, and without it, it would be really hard. Because, again, our endowment is what pays for our own grant making and our operations, right? Fees don't cover it all. So that's a very limited amount of money. So we have to have the right kind of partnership.
If you stay for a second on the investment committee, because I think it's very often the case for many foundations that that their investment committee are expert in investing outside of an impact realm.
Yes.
And sort of leave the investing to us. You people do your good in the world, and we'll make sure that returns accrue to the portfolio.
Yes.
Without betraying any investment committee members who may be out there.
No. I mean, it's interesting because we've taken kind of the Hippocratic Oath of investing. And Cambridge, again, has a mandate in terms of the kind of advisors that they bring back to the committee for approval, because it makes no sense for us to be working really hard on the programmatic community impact side if on the other side of the ledger we're investing in things that make it really hard for us to get to our mission. And so we've been able to do that, and the returns are great. When people say, "Oh, wow, diverse managers, you're going to have to sacrifice return," I'm like, well, why is that the first thing out of your mouth? Because our 57% diverse manager side of the investments are doing quite well and beating sometimes all white and all male led firms. So, so we have, and I know we have an outsized voice because of our size and where we sit and who our donors are. So we're leaning in heavy on it, and donors aren't complaining. Yeah. Returns are great.
Yeah. Sam, as you think about now this next phase, integrated investment strategies, is that something that you're kind of hand in glove with your investment committee, or are you kind of bringing each other mutually along, or how is that playing out?
I mean, I certainly it's all been done hand in glove with our investment committee and with our board. I mean, we had really significant discussions with our board. I think, part of I think a challenge in managing a foundation is, the weakness is the underside of the strength. Because it's independent capital, you don't have the discipline of an external constituent, and because the kind of outcome that you're seeking to drive is so indeterminate, it can be easy to rationalize success or to debate around what success really should be. And I think there's a mental mistake that we can sometimes make, is that because the financial investing arm of the foundation is quantitative and technical, it can't be questioned. You can't engage with it. And of course, that's not true at all. First of all, the basic math isn't that complicated. If you want to keep growing, you've got to get your spend rate plus inflation. So as long as your board members know algebra, they can engage fundamentally with the management of the financial side. But I also think that the level of engagement you expect from a trustee on the programmatic side, you should be expecting on the impact investing side. What is our real opportunity using return-seeking investments to drive impact? Do we have a signaling opportunity or don't we? Are people going to be looking to us or not? Is it actually the case that we think this return-seeking investment is going to somehow accelerate the attainment of some impact? Do we believe that we can get the leverage that we're looking for on the financial side? The same conversations you'd have about your social investing theory on the program side, you should be able to and must actually have on the impact investing side. If you're not doing that, then what you're really doing is paying down the moral cost of managing a big capital asset in the 21st century. And the problem is we actually need to make the world better in the concrete, not in the abstract.
That's right.
Right? That's what we need to be held accountable
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, one of the things that Cambridge has talked about is because we have had our mandate for them, they are now bringing diverse manager pipelines to all of their clients, which means we're helping to change the industry. It's not just on the programmatic side. It is actually who is managing this money.
That's right.
And because we've been able to push on the gas pedal, it's actually starting to have an impact with their other institutional clients, which is great.
How are each of you, respectively, I'd ask you to be quick about this, thinking about that kind of impact measurement now part of the impact investment equation? Maybe that's, in your case, a Cambridge Associates kind of
No,
task.
and Occam is specifically in terms of, Patrick, back in the back, in terms of measurement around the impact investment side of the world.
Yeah. I mean, so we're thinking, we're developing the next level of measurement for us. It's been pretty traditional so far, to be honest with you. We were a part of building the field in the South with regard to CDFIs and financial intermediaries, so it was easy to put a measure on it. And as we shift into a much more racial equity and racial justice approach on both sides of our portfolio, we really are trying to imagine what does it look like to put measures in place that don't actually penalize the folks who we're trying to invest in. So Julius and others have been really clear with us. If we're going to focus on Black and brown fund managers, for instance, don't saddle them with these other requirements that make it actually difficult or impossible for them to perform. And we're really giving some thought to that. And I think we've landed in a good place. But again, it's because we've been able to shift the investment committee's understanding of what our risk profile looks like.
Have any of you gone down the path of, on the investment side, compensation related to returns and impact on the management side?
Nope.
I don't know. I mean,
Maybe we should look into that.
No. Not yet. How about that? Not yet.
Okay.
I mean, again, our approach really implicitly believes that the social benefit is going to get internalized in the return. I mean, that's our hypothesis, right? In integrated impact investing. Our hypothesis is seek the market rate return because you actually think that's the more efficient, that's the more Pareto efficient position. We'll find out. I mean, obviously the question is that competitive thesis correct?
Right.
I'm going to ask each of you, we call it a lightning round, but advice you have for the field, but maybe not the field so much, but as you think about where you sit in kind of in a private foundation, relatively, not small, relatively smaller, but so Nicole at a community foundation and Sam, where you are with a relatively robust foundation with access to resources. How do you think, what's your advice for where the field can and should go?
Yeah. There are many answers, I think, to that question. For us, the thing that we're leaning into is the challenge of the moment. I mentioned earlier, this is one of the most difficult moments in recent American history. And I want to be clear about this. There was an outstanding panel yesterday about the connection between impact investment and democracy. And there are a set of actors that are investing against what we understand as democracy. They are investing against the work that we do every day and are trying to do. And we need to understand the breadth and severity and the context of what's happening in our resources, our grants, our impact investing, our leadership in the field, our influence should be used to really make sure that we're not only pushing back against those efforts, but that we're leading in the field the way Nicole and Sam have described, really making sure that we're setting forth an affirmative agenda that allows us to invest in ways that close the racial wealth gap and that acknowledge the real serious issues before us in this country. Philanthropy has, I think, a duty to show up that way, and the full extent of our resources should be directed that way. I'm a little concerned that the field doesn't understand that we're in a very difficult moment and we're required to step up and step into this moment.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Nicole, as you think about community foundations, particularly or DAF sponsors or what's next?
Yeah, get off the sidelines is what I tell folks. It is not that hard to get off the sidelines. You can start easy, small, investing in CDFIs, where get CDs in community banks and places where dollars can be put to work in communities that need it and that can't get regular capital. Yeah. So, or I should say mainstream capital, right? So it is not that hard to get into the game. And then as you do it and you become more comfortable with it, then you can get more complex and with your approach. But we've got to start looking at all of our assets, all of the resources, the platforms and the megaphones that we have, and use all of it in this moment. The communities have been crying for it and screaming for it. It's about time that we all pay attention. This is the choir here. You wouldn't be here if you didn't believe this. And I think it's up to all of us to encourage our colleagues who aren't in the room, who are still on the sidelines, and help them see how they can get into the game.
Well, I mean, you got to agree with everything that's been said. I mean, that this capital mode exists is a completely remarkable thing. I mean, this is private wealth aggregation, guided by private intent, broadly oriented toward the public interest. Like, you couldn't imagine a more libertarian theory of social innovation. And it is that. It's sort of a Tocquevillian idea that some measure of innovation in this country comes from below. It needs to come outside of established institutions, number one. And the second thing is that this is the most developed form of market capitalism in human history. It anchors a globalized, financialized society. And ostensibly, we don't allow this to exist because it's natural. We allow it to exist because we think it's a remarkably efficient, effective way to deliver powerful social goods that we value. I think I would agree with my co-panelists, though. I think the society is telling us that the full range of social goods that should be served is not represented, particularly in financialized capital. Right. We, as institutions that think we stand in for those marginalized social goods and the marginalized populations who need access to those goods, we do have a role to be helping capital markets to understand how to do this effectively. And also, every generation has to continue to justify this crazy experiment. And so the task for each generation is what's the new problem and what's the new tool. and how do we effectuate the fit between those things. So the practical things I would say are, number one, it's great to hear how much this conference and community has grown. That means there's expertise.
That's right.
And so the institutions that don't think they have the expertise need to be tapping into the people in this room and in this network. We always want more great professionals, but we clearly have enough to be doing a better and continually improving job. I think the other thing that I would say is, the appropriate perennial knock on our sector is that we're not rigorous enough about what impact is. That's to some extent a byproduct of the indeterminacy of what we're trying to achieve, but that's not a reason not to keep trying. And we spend a lot of time on things like evaluation, but I think 80% of evaluation is clarity about what you're trying to achieve. So that whether you achieve it or not, you can be direct and open and candid about that, and therefore learn yourself or contribute to the ongoing learning of the society. So I think this is an exciting moment, frankly, to get even more serious about this work.
Yeah.
Well, Nicole, you spoke to like preaching to the choir, but I think it's fair to say, to your point, Sam, the choir is growing, and it has. And while we may not be convincing, we still need to learn how to sing. And I think it's through engagement with each other like this, like folks on the panel up here, but you in the room, and forums like this that we do some of our best learning. So please join me in expressing our appreciation to this panel.
Thanks, Bruce.
Thank you.
Please welcome James Walls, Senior Vice President of Programs and Initiatives of the Mission Investors Exchange.
Thank you again to our panelists for such a dynamic conversation on unlocking all assets as we now shift to the next part of the program. But first, I got a story. During my time at the Kellogg Foundation, I was fortunate enough to work under June Montgomery Tabron's leadership. June empowered the foundation's impact investment team, and me personally, to go further in creating opportunities. She supported our efforts to develop investments that were intentionally focused on supporting entrepreneurs of color nationally. However, I always remembered what I was told during my early days at Kellogg, and I quote, "June does not play. You better know your numbers." Now, this is where our next speaker, Jay Brown, comes into the story. While in the office, working late, of course, whiteboarding, analyzing numbers, completing investment presentations and memos, that probably sounds familiar to all of you in here. I always had my music playing in the background, keeping me going. My playlist was primarily comprised of notable hip hop and R&B artists of the time. What I did not know, but I know now, is Jay Brown worked and partnered with many of these artists as they transformed music and entertainment. So Jay, along with changing pop culture as we know it, I want to offer my personal thanks to you for helping me know my numbers when I had to face June. Years later, the Kellogg Foundation continues to place equity at the center of its impact investing strategy, most recently evidenced by the program evaluation published in partnership with Thailand. Jay continues to lead successful business ventures and investments like Marcy Ventures Partners, and remains dedicated to pushing investors to invest in communities of color and talented entrepreneurs. And with that, it's my privilege and honor to bring June and Jay to the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you all this afternoon. Thank you, James. Every time I see James, I have a little smile on my face because I remember his beginning and the great ideas that he brought to the Kellogg Foundation that we pursued. And that's the type of environment that we have at the Kellogg Foundation. Innovation, at the end of the day, innovation is what has created this entire sector for all of us. So thank you, James. And I also want to thank the panel we just experienced. They were just spectacular in really explaining this work. It's not cookie cutter, as you heard. It's very complex, but what you also hear is that there is a lot of room for creativity in this space. And I think that's what has grown the field. And so today, I'm going to have a conversation with not the practitioner from a mission investing perspective, but I want to show you what it actually looks like. We talked a lot about the mechanics, and now we're going to talk a little bit about what shows up when you execute against this kind of a goal and a mission. So I'm honored to be here today with Jay Brown, and we are going to really take this to a very practical level and think about, how you can do mission investing, being open, and understanding that this is a field that we are continuing to design and create. I'm not going to say much about the Kellogg Foundation. I know you all have heard of our work in this space. We are very much aligned with the last panel on how we pursue this work. We have been in this field now for 17 years. We started this work in 2007. And as Nicole said, it began looking like, investing in CDFIs and hoping that they can deploy these resources in communities all across the country. And then we started thinking we can do more. And I think the entire work in this space is we have to do more. We can push more. We're talking about an investment sector that has less than 1% women and people of color. So we know there's a lot more that we can do if we're really trying to get impact and social impact. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and what more can be in this space. We're just at the very beginning of this journey. So I would like to turn to someone that I have just come to see creativity every time he opens his mouth. And I know there's a lot for us to learn from this gentleman. So Jay, thank you for being here, first of all. And I'd like for us to start with you telling us a little bit about your story. Tell us your story and how your story ends up creating Marcy Venture Partners.
Well, I want to first say that I'm one of these people that have way more than 1% of women and people of color in their company.
Thank you.
31 years ago, without telling my true age, I started with Quincy Jones, and I was hired in the music business, and he mentored me and took me around the business, and he also taught me what it meant to be in business. And just a short story, because they didn't give us that much time. I started making records, and then I was in the studio till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I just thought it was really great to do that, and we had some success. And I went into the office one day, and he was sitting in the office, and he was like, "Hey, was it great?" I said, "It was great." He goes, "That's good, but you're not here on time." And I said, "What do you mean?" I walked in at 11 o'clock, and I thought I was doing everything right. He said, "You chose that position to be creative. That was you that decided that. And your decision to do that is to also still be here on time, because all these people out here are waiting for you to make your deposit, and the deposit what that creativity is, so that they can't move because you're the engine. So I expect you to be here during banking hours." So from that moment on, I came in there like 8 o'clock, 8:30 every day, and I'm sure he probably meant 9 o'clock was banking hours, but I wanted to be early because early was on time. And a month after that, he saw that I was doing that, and then he started taking me around different parts of the business and wanted me to learn it. And one day I just asked him, why was I doing all that? He goes, "Because I believe you could do more. I believe you could run a business." And it went from that till starting Roc Nation in 2008 with my partners, and we still, co-chair of Roc Nation, and we have 500 artists and athletes, and starting Marcy Ventures in 2019. Amongst a few other businesses that we started. we're all entrepreneurs by spirit, so and which means that we invested in ourselves, because we actually didn't know rooms like this existed. As I sat and I listened to the last 4 people that were on this stage, as well as knowing this beautiful woman over here, that I look at all the people that are in here. You guys are on the front line of change. You guys are heroes that are making change for millions and millions of people. And a lot of them don't know that you guys are doing it, but you guys are actually doing it. So the biggest gift to give is to give without receiving, and that's what's happening over here. So congratulations to you all.
Thank you. I know you had a vision for Marcy Ventures. Are you there yet?
You know, I get so excited talking about Marcy. So Marcy Venture Partners started off with myself, Jay-Z, and a guy by the name of Larry Marcus. And then we hired several people, Charlie Hanna, Sammy, and Mason. But Marcy came from where Jay's from, which is Marcy Projects. It was a dream. It was a man sitting out, staring outside a window with a dream that he could do something bigger. And, you know, he's always been great with, you know, creating names. So I never get in the middle of that, creating names or logos and stuff like that. That's his creative side of it. And our vision was to help people to have the same dream. There's a clothing line that we have that's part of Roc Nation. It's called Paper Planes. It's the same dream. The Paper Planes is like a plane on a hat, and you'll see a lot of people wearing. You might not even know what it is, but it's because when we were kids, we used to throw paper planes, and we used to dream we were somewhere else. And we never knew we were going to fly on a plane. We never knew what we were going to do. It was not like we grew up with a lot of money or anything like that, but we had ambition. And what it still means for us today, it means that when we still wear that clothing and what we do, it means that dreams come true and never stop dreaming. So my ambition is really big. It's probably, you know, some people will say it's too big, but when, you know, someone tells me to stop dreaming, I just stop hanging around them. You know, I had this, we had this event the other day, and there's a gentleman in here who has about as much hair as I do on my head, and his name is Robbie Robinson. He started this fund called Pendulum Management. It was all for minority investment, and I respected what he was doing, and I'd known him for many years, and I used to just, Jay and I would watch him and see what he was doing. And one day, they always look at people and saying, people of color can never get together. We had the same ideology, we had the same vision, we knew what we wanted to do, we knew we wanted to grow. And we were representing about 650 million or AUM, and he has something similar. And we came to the conclusion, your investment strategy is the same, but you don't have the same investor. Your investments are pretty much the same. We have one that crosses. Together, we have a wider reach. Your staff is very efficient. It can make us more efficient. And we decided to say that, I guess politically I can't say it because as he's registered, I can say, we decided to say we would talk about doing a merger. And people in the world don't see that, they never get to see chances like that happen where you see two people who are minority owned and say that you're going to come together. So I'm really actually inspired. I'm really happy about where we're going and what we're doing, and I know that together we'll be greater. So that's the next step.
That's great. So you're talking to us in this room, and we pride ourselves on due diligence. When we are looking at these investments, we want to make sure that they will get a return. Mm-hmm. So you walked into a meeting. You had yourself, you had Jay-Z as your partner. You first asked for resources. How did that go? How was our due diligence?
Really good. You know, first of all, you got an incredible staff. I mean, Cynthia is grilling me. Humira, forget about it. She's like, where are your women? Where are your people of color? Where's this? I want to see that. And you know, she's, you know, you better be prepared dealing with your staff because they will put you on your heels. So I think that your due diligence is very efficient. You know, it actually helps us be better. You know, our first fund is 65% invested women and people of color. Our second fund is 72% invested people of color. Our first fund was 85 million. Our second one was 320-25. We did good with our first fund. We're doing better with our second. And we'll do better, and we'll do even better as we even move along. And when we invest, we don't just invest. We invest to say, if there's bigger allocations, I'm going to call you and say, I think you should look at this. Because I look at ourselves as what we call back in the industry, of music industry, called A&R, which is artist resource, artist repertoire. You know, as you're sitting there where you're at in Michigan, we're a resource that's around the world that's telling you this is what's going on, this is where culture's moving, you should pay attention to this. This is positive, this is real positive impact. This is a novelty, I don't think you should touch this. So we want to be in a resource with your investment that you're actually invested in, but you're also getting a partner.
I want to ask one more question in this space. Who told you no, and what was their reason?
I had people that I thought were friends tell me no, but they wanted being acquaintances, you know. I like staying behind the scenes, like you all do. I didn't know what to expect coming in here. I think this is really great. But together, my partners and I, we built many billion-dollar companies. We've been part of, and part of Fenty Beauty, Fenty Skin, Fragrance, Savage Fenty, Ace of Spades, Douce. We have done it, and they've been successful because our mission is aligned. We know where we were going, we know what we were doing, and our strategy was the same. And I just said this in this place the other day. I said, we don't buy culture, we create culture. And that's where we're about, and we'll continue to do that. But as entrepreneurs and as investors, people look at it as two different things. We combine them both. I'd rather you come and invest with us. It's what people, because we can invest in others, and we can help fast forward their production of getting them to the place of success. And that's so we've been told no a lot. We've been told no by artists with Roc Nation saying not coming with us, and we're like, okay. We were part of the first billionaire artists that ever existed. You got Rihanna, you got Jay-Z, so, and no one was even saying that type of language before.
And I'm asking these questions because I don't think on an application there's a question that says, what's your dream? Mm-hmm. How can we support your dream?
Yeah.
And I say that to say, as we continue to push in this sector, there are standards and protocols that I think have just been perpetuated over time, but they obviously are structural barriers for women and people of color, seeing that we only have less than 1% in this sector. And so as we continue to think about how do you connect with culture, how do you connect with how these resources will go back into community and grow other entrepreneurs and other business owners in a way that helps us understand why this is an extremely successful investment and one that we should consider, and many like those. Mm-hmm. And I think that's where the learning is in this sector, if we continue to perpetuate some of those structural barriers that don't allow us to really get to know the person behind the investment and why this is not a risky investment. That's, we started in this sector. We have to admit that we were thinking these were very, very high risk investments, and we had to automatically believe that we would have less than a market rate return. Now what we know is there are many opportunities to significantly grow your portfolio in this space, including our own portfolio, and we're continuing to learn not to leave these kind of investments on the sidelines, but to make them a part of the entire portfolio.
I think we're going to do well with you. We have 4 exits, and we already had 4 exits, and we just started, and our DPI is 25%, top decile. So I'm just on our first fund. We're already moving in the right direction, and listen, if we're in it to build it up, we're in it to sell it, we're in it to go ahead and have a return, and because I want to make sure that if you see somebody else that looks like me or somebody else that came in and you said I'm gonna make a bet on them, you're gonna actually do it twice. But you've already done that. I guess I'd like to spin it on you, and I want to ask you a question because you've been heavily responsible for things like this. What does racial equity mean to you?
Thank you for that. In our work, we know that racial equity means that any person will not believe that they are being disadvantaged because of the color of their skin. every person will have the same opportunity for access to capital, for ability to grow and become and fulfill whatever dream they have. But what we do know is to get to racial equity, you have to go through what we call racial healing, which is about connecting with people on a human level and hearing their story and understanding why their perspective is an important one and one that can lead to opportunities for many people and families. And so all of our work is about the core of creating equity and making sure that everyone has an opportunity to thrive, particularly children.
That's great. Do you mind if I ask one more question as a moderator?
Yes.
Somebody just flagged us and said 10 minutes. My other question is why, I won't say the amount, but what did we do, just for other people that may be in the room that may be looking to meet you or whatever, why did you decide to invest in us?
Yeah, several reasons. First of all, the most important reason, I believe, is that we understand what unlocking culture and narrative does for learning and growth. And your underlying values around culture and narrative actually aligns very well with our work around dismantling racial and structural barriers for young people and children of color. So one, it was aligned with our mission, our purpose, our values. Second, it was led by people of color. One of the things that we wanted to do in this portfolio is to, as we build new narratives, the best people to tell those new narratives are people of color. Who controls the story? Who controls the message? And so we were looking for that alignment and a great vision. So it made sense for us. It fits in our portfolio. And as I've shared with you, we have other very successful investments like Charles King and the film industry. Again, a narrative, a way to change these myths, to dismantle these beliefs that an investment in a person of color, a woman, is a sacrifice, and that quality isn't there. And we clearly see the level of competitive advantage you've created and how this is just the beginning.
Oh, great. Well, I have to speak to Charles because I think he was hiding you from us at first.
Well, as you mentioned, our team, we find some very successful opportunities to really express what this means in many different ways. There wasn't a blueprint on what social impact investing is. It's being created, and it will continue to be created.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to a couple things that you said. You were talking about resumes, and some of the companies that we have looked at to invest, and we would ask them, why aren't there more women or why aren't there more people of color? And the question was simple, and the answer was, I don't know how. And I didn't take that as being offensive, because I was like, they're being honest. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give them the tools to fix it. It's kind of like my son told me, they asked me, what does my son want to do when he graduates college? I said, I don't know. If he wants to paint, I'm gonna give him paintbrushes. I'm gonna give him the tools. So I didn't take it offensive. I went right into the modes to figure out how I can give them tools that help them. But that's a common thing in what people said. And they asked me, how do I hire? And I say, actually, if I wrote up a resume, nobody would believe me, especially back in the days. They wouldn't hire me. I don't really look at resumes. I kind of go off of gut, and I think if they can do it, then they're great. I also believe if you hire them, you can fire them if they're not good. So,
exactly. That's risk-taking.
Yeah. But, you'll be surprised how many people we do that. And I would challenge, like, all of you great people in here, if you really want to make some additional change, you got to figure out what's the next steps for where your successor is and what your succession plan is. Because your legacy is built on how many people you touch. It's not built on how much money you make. You're making more money so you can do more great things. That's the reason why you guys are here. You guys are looking for sustainability. You guys are looking for making sure these funds last way past you and generations past you. And if you can grab a young person every year that you can give an internship to, or even twice a year, you'd be surprised what you do for them. You give them hope. You create people like me. This is why I'm up here. So that's what I would sit there and say out of this community here and how strong this is. You guys represent a lot of money. Not only that, you guys represent a lot of wisdom. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I love that you closed there because, you know, we want financial returns and we also want social returns. Mm-hmm. And access to capital for people of color is part of the journey. It isn't the full equation. It's also how we're building community, how we're giving back, how we're growing opportunities and making this more systemic as opposed to one-offs. And I do want to point out as we close, and we know that, you know, people of color, funds of color tend to hire more people of color, tend to mentor and allow greater access for people of color. So this is also a way of creating a new structure and growing the pie. We know this isn't a zero-sum game, so every time we give an investment to a person of color, that means a white firm didn't get money. No, we're growing the pool, so everyone is investing, and we're creating an ecosystem that works for everyone as we continue to grow our economic engine for this country.
Well, that kind of goes back to you were educating me earlier on tracking, and how do you, can you explain to them how you track?
Yes, yeah, we were, and you all know this, whenever you get into the conversation around metrics as it relates to this work, it gets kind of complicated. But I said for us, we know what we're measuring. Mm-hmm. We know we're trying to measure how this money is reaching the ground, how it's improving the lives for children, and that's economic empowerment. That's also workforce and creating jobs and opportunities for people to have livable wage jobs. It's about how it connects in community, how young people are thriving because of it. And there are ways when, as someone said earlier, when you know what your mission is and you know why you're doing this, it's easy to know how you're advancing toward that mission, and that's the type of measurements that we track. We could go on forever. The sign that said 10 minutes is completely gone now.
Yeah. She put it. I'm not going to point her out,
yeah.
But she put it down.
She's like, okay, you need to wrap up. But I have to tell you, we could speak all afternoon. Again, I want us to see this as a window of what social impacting investing can look like. It doesn't have to be a CDFI investment. We can do that, but look at the innovation and creativity and different ways to look at how we're improving social conditions for people and families in this nation and the world. And as I close, I was told to inform you that we are going to wrap up, and there's going to be some breakout groups after this particular session. And then we're going to come back together, and at 3:30, we'll meet again in this room. And again, I want to thank you all for being here this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.